Welcome back to the Tribal Alliance podcast, another Survivor podcast, but this time we are taking a Tribal Alliance detour. We took a left out of Fiji and we landed in Branford, Connecticut for season 9 of Survivor Branford, and we are going to be recapping that full season here on the Tribal Alliance podcast. So, you're wondering why it's just me? Where is my co-host? He competed on season 9. There were 7 newbies, 7 people that have played the game before in the 8 seasons prior, and they're going to battle it out and see who came out on top of season 9 of Survivor Branford. I can't podcast this thing alone here. So, I have a very special guest. I'm going to let them in to the Zoom room now. It's the winner of season 8, Ryan Grande. What's up, man?
What's up, Pat? How we doing today?
Good,
You hear
man.
me?
I can. I can hear you live and well. How you doing?
Pretty well, pretty well. I don't know, got the day off. I'm a teacher myself, so nice day off today, which is a nice change. But yeah, I'm excited for this new season of Brantford.
Mhm.
Watched it this weekend, and a lot of returning faces and also exciting new players. Excited to see Steven from the podcast here, and
Mhm.
looking forward to talking about what should be a great season. Jim does a great job.
Yeah, I was highly impressed. I watched it twice. Wanted to just enjoy it the first time. Second run through, did some notes here, paid a little bit closer attention to some certain things. Um, and yeah, Jim does a great job. Location's beautiful. I love the setup. I love 14 players. Usually you see a high number in these live games. It was refreshing because I got to know everybody in the first episode, which was super cool.
Yeah, I think Jim keeps it pretty simple because he wants a very strict timeline. He doesn't want to go over, and
Mhm.
these sort of things always have these Survivor events always have things that go a little over, whether that be a challenge or a problem with
Mhm.
just scheduling in general. So the way he runs things, it's a really tight ship, and I don't think it. I th- I think the way Jim runs Survivor Branford, there's maybe not as high a ceiling as there could be with like a smaller cast, but I think there's
Mhm.
a very high floor, and his seasons are very consistent, and the editing he does is very impressive, and he keeps them going out one a year, which most of these LRGs can't do, including
Mhm.
my own. I ran my own LRG in college, and it's really hard to keep up with editing. So all that put together makes for a really good product.
Yeah, I was always wondering, is there, a bigger team there? I mean, you played what, 2 seasons? Survivor Brantford.
Yeah,
Big
so I
team there,
played
like a lot of dedication? Is it a lot of just hands on deck? Is it just a small group of committed people?
So I think to start the season, there's about 4 or 5 people outside of Jim, maybe 4 to 6 people that do camera work. There's someone that runs the drones. Sometimes you see a few drone shots in this episode. Then there's sometimes like usually one person going around like grabbing people for confessionals, and then also um one person just focused on core parts of the group to try and catch the people if they find like an idle clue or an immunity idol. But then as the game goes on and people are eliminated, you're allowed to join the filming crew. So usually like early members that get voted out, like in my first season when I got voted out somewhat early, I was filming for the rest of the season. So that's fun because it lets you like interact and be a part of the game still, and I don't know, it works out.
Yeah, no, it's super cool, especially when, it's a bunch of fans of the show putting together a game. It's like you need all hands on deck. Like in games that, I haven't played, I've done like production, I've only played just a couple games, but like production is just as unique and fun in its own, fun way. You get to see the game through a different lens, and you're seeing the game through a different lens, not playing after the last 2 seasons. What did you think overall the first episode?
I thought it was great. I thought I really liked the group that Jim put together for the returnees. I think those groups will always skew towards like newer seasons. So I mean, if someone wanted like a mix of like a lot of people from the early seasons, I think that's just unrealistic at this
Mhm.
point. But I think the group that he picked from the newer seasons was a good mix of people that may have played together but weren't like super close allies. And if there
Mhm.
were, it was only like maybe one of their super close allies is on this tribe. So it's very balanced. I think that no one is there isn't like a very obvious alliance to me coming into the game if I hadn't seen the episode and just looked at that
Mhm.
tribe. So I think it's all forming very naturally there. And then the new players tribe, I think you've got people that are there to play. I think even the people that seem a bit newer to Survivor, like Christy, seem to make some small initial mistakes in terms of um telling people about her idol. But in general, besides that, which I feel like is a very new to Survivor player mistake, I felt like a lot of her instincts were very strong and she was still playing aggressive enough, but not
Mhm.
overly aggressive. And I think the newbie cast is here to play. It doesn't feel to me like one person is obviously like next out of that group, which is a problem you can have when you have a bunch of people that are not familiar with the way a Survivor game is paced.
Yeah, I feel like, with the theme being, people that have played versus people that, would be you'd call newbies to this specific game. Um, I feel like it stacks up well. I feel like, just like strategically, socially, physically, like across the board, just feels like a pretty balanced tribe. I feel like the only upper hand that, these newbies have is those pre-existing relationships and, things that can, ultimately be at their detriment as well. So, is there anybody on the newbies tribe that, if you were on that tribe, maybe someone that you could see yourself just off first impressions, maybe aligning with someone that maybe screams kind of towards your gameplay.
I mean, this doesn't align with what the other players on the tribe thought, and I understand why, but I think Tim is someone I would be drawn to just
Hmm.
because he feels very aggressive, but not overly aggressive. Like his thought process, I think was sound, and I think he has a good head on his shoulders. But I think he accelerated the play in like a little short term game a little faster than he needed to. But I feel like he's a very friendly guy, very sociable guy, very competent strategically. That I feel like I wouldn't be like lost with him, but also like um I don't know. I feel like he's a big presence that even if he survives like these next few votes and who knows like with the way Christie seems to be talking about him. I feel like he's someone that's always going to be on everyone in the game's radar. So
Yeah.
late in the game, he would be someone that might go before me if we're allies and we're in a tight spot. And I think that's something you want to think about when you're picking your allies. Sometimes is not always that they're going to be bigger threats than you, because you don't always want your allies to be bigger threats than you because you want to work with them
Right.
technically, but and you want to get to the end with them. But if things go south, you want them to be a bigger target than you, whether that
Mhm.
be because they're a bigger threat or be because they've been winning a lot of challenges or because they're very loud and obnoxious and people get stuck like oh, I can't work with this person, but I happen to be the one person that can work with this person. So you got to give some reason for the blowback to not be on you.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I feel like Tim. I like his personality. I like this quote about being the lone shark,
Yeah.
and I feel like he was a lot of fun to start. But I also get why people are very apprehensive. I think it's understandable that I don't know, there wasn't too much to go on about Jackson, and maybe they
Mhm.
didn't hate the vote, but also like, wow, if he's going to be that aggressive on someone for little to no reason so far, how can that affect me? Like, if I don't feel good enough with Tim, where are things going to end up with me when things go south? So, yeah. I liked him and I would want to work with Tim, but I also understand the hesitancy from the tribe, and I don't think he had as good an episode as he could have.
Mhm. Yeah, I think Tim's in a little bit of trouble, but I think there's a world where he, can see it through to the other side, I think. Yo, what's up, Cat?
This is
Nice.
Frank
Oh,
Lynn.
oh, visitor. But no, I mean, I think Tim, I was kind of thinking that it was going to land on Tim. We'll get to the, result, spoiler, but there's a world where Tim's in some deep shit because he might be playing too hard, but it's already good that he's this well aware that he is playing that hard that early on. Hopefully, he can tone it back a bit because I think he's a compelling guy. I think he's like fun to watch. I think it'll be a bit entertaining. What about this returnee tribe? Is there anybody? Because you've played either with these people or know maybe of these people or have watched them play before. Um, Anyone stand out to you as like a no-brainer? Of course, they're back.
Um, well, Dennis. I don't know. He is and isn't a no brainer because Dennis is kind of the staple. He's kind of the bananas of Survivor Branford for the challenge
Mhm.
fans out there. He's been in every season so far,
Wow.
and of course,
Okay.
the lore is the first few seasons of Survivor Branford was just a group of Jim's friends, and Dennis happened to be the one that was able to do most of them while other people went in and out. But then as it got further, and Jim brought in more friends of friends and friends of friends of friends,
Mhm.
so the cast wasn't as close of knit friends. Dennis kind of just stuck through and stuck along, and now it's just kind of like a meme or a joke, like, oh, the Dennis is back. And I think he was considering taking a break after last season, as he's had two, maybe not tough placements, but tough outcomes in a row. And at this point, like, it's like, when do you take a break when you've been playing every season? Like, is it worth it to take a break just to have a fresher outcome coming in? But no, he's stuck with it. He's ready to play.
All
I
right.
think he had a pretty good first episode, at least
Agree.
compared to last season, from what I know.
Hmm.
And yeah, I mean, he's pretty much the lock for me. Obviously, on every season, unless he really felt like he wanted to take a break. The other person that I feel like was a lock. I mean, there's some players here like Michelle, who's a huge player, but I think she's a lock if Jim ever wanted her. But someone I think that showed last season that they were worthy of being a lock to me was Pat. Pat was really passionate last season. He was someone I worked with. Um, had a tough pre-merge and then kind of put things together at the swap, and then um, was kind of just the victim of a split merge vote. But he showed he was really into the game and willing to adapt. And I think that's what you want from a returning player always is someone that's looking to have some sort of story arc or some
Yeah.
kind of showing that they're looking to correct their mistakes. You don't want someone that comes back and is just going to do the same thing
Hmm.
over again, because I think most players are ready for you to do the same thing over again and kick you out if
Hmm.
you are doing the same thing over again. So um yeah, Pat definitely showed this episode that
Yeah.
he is playing different. I wouldn't consider it in a positive way, but in an entertaining way, absolutely.
Yeah, Pat I thought was super entertaining. He's someone I had early on in my notes being as like someone who, to just to watch just as a character standpoint. But yeah, I mean just to get into the Parkside tribe, you have Josh. Josh is a hand model, super cool.
Mhm.
There's some professions for sure in this tribe. My man, I think, is in probably a really good social spot after this episode. We'll kind of get into that a bit. Um, Tim, I feel like he wants to be a villain, but like, there's some of those villains that are super intimidating, that are super like, they know, they're game bots, they know the game, they're strategic, masterminds in their own way. Um, Tim strikes me as like a lovable villain, someone who like you want to like root for, but is like maybe plotting on the low. Um,
Yeah.
Fear that he'll play too hard.
Mm.
Jackson didn't get much from Jackson early on. Kind of saw later where that kind of falls. We'll get into that. Steve, a fellow podcaster, just put it on the record. Just because Steve podcasts here doesn't mean I'm going to say nice things about Steve. I'll trash Steve. Just kidding. It's all love. But Steve, didn't get much like a lot of people talking about Steve as like a close ally outside of maybe Josh, but seemed like maybe Tasha has some confusion going on because I feel like she wants to do like a lot of things at once. And then there's Christy, who we kind of touched on, and Victoria. So they have a very strong, tribe, just to kind of introduce them all. we see, that there's a couple kumbaya moments, and they're all kind of just going over each other's professions, going over their challenge strengths. I mean, right off the bat, like, was there any kind of pairings or any, kind of alliances that you just kind of anticipated to see before we kind of saw something start to form?
Um, Not particularly. It didn't shock me. I guess I would say that Jackson was the first name thrown out though.
Yeah.
Just because, and this is a problem I've had in both my seasons of Brantford too, where I've been a name early and thankfully been able to survive that first vote. But it's hard early because you have a very short period of time,
Mhm.
and you gotta make at least I think 1 to 2 connections early that are strong. Because
Yeah.
as soon as a name starts gaining traction, it's over. And Jackson seemed a little quieter at first. He doesn't seem like a quiet person overall. He's someone I've actually met postseason, and with no spoilers on the season, and I thought he did really well. I was kind of shocked in the first episode
Yeah.
when it was between him and Tim because they're both people I've met since the season, and um, definitely, yeah, I wasn't shocked that he went just because in those initial pre swap or pre challenge like recordings, he seemed a little quieter than
Yeah.
most when they were having their group conversations. But like pairings, I really thought um like before the challenge I thought we're gonna to connect. I don't, I don't know. I kind of thought, yeah, I kind of thought Josh would do well, and I wasn't sort of shocked that
Mhm.
he um Tasha Steven created that trio afterwards. I felt like Josh was never he seems like quiet, but when he has something to say, it feels very meaningful and funny, and it feels like very likable. Like you're excited when Josh says something,
Yeah.
even though he isn't always the one speaking up the most. So I'm not shocked that he was in a early alliance. I think he's very underrated and had a good first episode. But
Mhm.
yeah, I didn't really like see any duos or trios forming early that was very obvious, but I guess more so I would say I wasn't shocked by the players who were able to be a part of a duo or trio. They seem to be taking the game at the medium pace, as Mr. Adam Sandler would say.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right there. And I think, they also come to talk about this, ambassador twist. Did you have to experience that in your previous seasons of playing? What do you think about that twist? Do you think it adds anything at all? Do you think it's good? Would you want to do it? Like,
Um, I did not have this twist. No, I kind of wish we had seen the twist in the first episode. I get why it wasn't because they kind of probably wanted one tribal for people to kind of socialize and be a
yeah,
part of the game without that interfering. If it were like a longer term game like Survivor on the Real Show, then I think they do that in the first episode. But it's hard when you only have a short period of time because it's a 2 day
yeah.
weekend. So I get
Hmm.
why they didn't. But I think uh, what was your initial question? Like, would I want to do that?
Yeah,
I'm
like
thinking of
what do
something
you
else.
think of just the overall twist? Do you think that it adds any type of significant game value?
I think it's interesting. I think it's hard to say how much it will, because it's hard to balance. Because on one hand, I would say it would if people on if the person, so say someone from the returning tribe goes to the newbies tribe, if
Hmm.
people in the newbies tribe are willing to tell the returnee information, then yeah, that could really change the game, break up the dynamics. But you're also all together like for like a short period of time. So if I saw someone talking with the returnee a lot, then I would be, maybe they're gonna jump to the returnee's tribe and like not work with us at a merge or a swap. And that's kind of the sort of thing where, again, like if this were a longer form game, you'd have plenty of time to talk to everyone from your tribe and then also a little bit for the returnee. But when it's a short period of time, all the time you're spending with the returnee, it's like well, we've got a vote, we've got stuff to do. Like
Hmm.
I'd be a little nervous that you're spending so much of this important time. Every minute of these like 2 day live games is important. There's no time wasted to me. So um yeah, I don't know how effective this twist will be
Yeah,
just because I think it's gonna make a lot of people nervous if people try to utilize it. But I'm hoping that's not the case. And I definitely could be completely off. But just from the Parkside new player tribes initial like conversation about it, it seemed like they were more willing to sabotage it than implement it. But that's also the sort of thing that you would say
yeah.
in a group setting is,
Mhm.
we're not going to use it, and then someone will. So I think Tim's definitely the type of player that would want to use it, but going off of his first episode, that would probably hurt his game even further than we've seen so far.
For sure. And I think, in this live game format, and depending, specifically, relative to Survivor Branford and however long, how long is it, 32 hour? How long?
It's 36 hours. You start at
36 hours.
about 8, 9 a.m. on Saturday, and you finish around 7, 8 p.m. on Sunday. So it's about, I think that's 36 hours. Yeah.
Yeah, regardless, it's a long time out there, but it's fast. It's super quick. So the dangers of those games are twists implemented like this because it's not necessarily what the twist can do, it's the speculation that the twist has attached to it. So it's one of those things that can actually end up being the most amount of danger because people will be more hesitant to trust, people might be more hesitant to play certain advantages, go after certain things, talk to certain people, and make certain types of moves because of this. It's kind of like having the knowledge is power in the game, where this isn't as quite powerful, but it has that same sentiment as like, yeah, stealing from this specific person such a big power, but sometimes the power in itself is like the speculation of the unknown, which is super hard to really dice up in 36 hours.
Yeah, and it's hard to quantify that as a host too. So
Yeah.
I get why you still want to try these things as a host because you don't always know how they're going to end up. Like a completely different cast
Hmm.
would react to a twist like this completely
Very
different
different.
than another group of players. And
Hmm.
I think this is the type of twist that's either going to go really well or really poorly, and that's not necessarily the fault of the twist, but maybe the way the twist interacts with the type of players you have on a particular season. So, yeah, I'm excited to see
Me
how it
too.
plays out, but I also think the dynamics of these tribes have been good enough so far that even if it's kind of negligible, we're still gonna see some action in these next few episodes.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I think the cast not only has a lot of good game players, I think a lot of cool personalities, a lot of journeys to follow. So definitely excited to get into this episode a little bit more. Um, with this tribe, the Parkside tribe, um, initially they're this big Kumbaya tribe, but Christy ends up finding this idol. Am I correct? Jackson was like, I want to be entertaining. Did he like make a fake idol that fast, or did he like bring one in? Are you like allowed to bring in an idol or something?
Yeah, see, you're kind of allowed to bring in fake idols. That was something last season I did, and I don't know how much we're gonna talk about my last season. Can I just talk about it, or
Yeah.
because we're focused on this? Yeah, I mean, last
Oh, brother,
season
go with it.
I I brought I brought some fake idols in case I was like pushed into a corner. I had like a the season before they had an idol that was like a playing card with one of the players from the previous season's face on it because the
Yeah.
theme for last my season before was like kings and queens. They had like king and queen playing cards of the idols. So then the season after, I brought a fake that had like a king on it. It was the idol from the previous season. I like remade it, I
Yeah.
laminated it, and I was ready to like use it out. I never ended up using them, but I pulled them out at Final Tribal to like show like how prepared I was for like tough situations. Yeah, basically there's no rules. So there's no rules with fake idols with Survivor Branford. I think there should be because it's a little easy, and I also think the trope of someone finding a fake idol is very hard it's hard to work against like early on in a season when you have little time. You just get excited when you see it. So I kind of get why the other players didn't question it much, even though I think if they looked at the clue closely, it didn't really match where she found it. But so the clue was a bright beacon in a sea of brown. 1 yard nearby is where I'll be found. North, south, east, or west. Have no sense of direction. Take your best guess. Like the whole direction part doesn't really make any sense. The bright beacon doesn't really make any sense. I think they justified it by the sea of brown because it was still near dirt,
No.
but it doesn't really make sense. But also, you'll justify anything when you're playing. You'll question like, oh, maybe the host just didn't do a very good clue, even though he did.
Yeah.
So it's hard to push against with the amount of time you have. So that makes it tricky. But I do hope that someone, especially Steven, who did find the clue, reconsiders soon. But who knows with Jackson out of the game, that information completely gone, if they'll be searching for the idol at all, or they'll just think it's good and gone. But obviously, if Christy does play her idol at some point, then they'll know that that wasn't the real thing, and they might reconsider.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. I hope that kind of comes out sooner rather than later because for multiple reasons. One, because the more people there, the better, the more chaos will ensue early on in the game. But not only that, I just think that I mean, Christie was the only one it felt like that even wanted to keep Jackson in the game. I feel like everyone else was kind of just saying it, but it was always going to be Jackson. I feel like Christie was the only one that kind of extended that olive branch a bit. I mean, I don't think or Steve was me. I think they were always with Tim in this. I don't know.
Yeah, again, this is where I think Jim does a really good job editing because it felt a little more even than in retrospect
It did.
it seems like it was. Like there was a lot of back and forth, and Christie really spearheaded that. But when you're looking back at it, it does seem like most of the pro Jackson is Christie POV, and everything else when they're pro Jackson from the other players is when they're talking one on one or two on one with, I think, a group involving Christie. I don't know if there were conversations that didn't involve Christie or Jackson that were pro Jackson.
Uh,
I'm gonna guess no,
why not?
but I don't know. But yeah, yeah, I liked that she was for that. I also like that she caved at a certain point because, like you said, it doesn't seem like the four was truly there because if they wanted to, they had the numbers. It
Yeah.
seems like to do it because I don't think, yeah, be so I don't know. I think they arguably made the right decision. I think I would rather have Tim in just be of what I said earlier. He's very sociable. He's very if you feel like you're good with him, then he's like a target ahead of you. I
Yep.
think it's kind of tricky though
Shield.
because we didn't really see who Tim's top ally was in this episode. Did we at all? Like, did we get in a
No.
sense of who Tim was close with? That's what I'd be
And I
interested
feel
with.
like he wants it to
Who
probably
Tim?
be someone who maybe isn't reciprocating. That's why we maybe didn't see it yet. I don't know. Um, I could see him and Victoria, uh, something
Yeah,
there.
he did. Yeah, he did a little like head on his shoulder, like relieved after the vote. I don't think that was too much. I think that's just who Tim is. Just like whoever was next to him, he would do
Yeah.
that too. Like, oh, thank you. But yeah, I could see that. Victoria, I think, was maybe the quietest, or
Yeah.
like I got the least out of what her thoughts were in this episode. Her two confessionals were very like by the book with what others were doing. So I'm interested in seeing what she's looking like going forward. But yeah,
Yeah, I'll tell you
it
what,
could be Tim and her.
she excites me as a player, Victoria. I feel like she's someone who we're gonna get more from over time. I
Mhm.
just feel like socially she'll be able to kind of just fit in anywhere. I think strategically, that's going to come. I think she's going to use, those things to her advantage, maybe being viewed as, more timid, more shy. I don't even think she's shy. I think maybe we just got the least amount from her. I'm sure she's actually really outgoing, but I'm not sure. But I'm excited. I'm excited to see more of her, which is, you know, a good thing because I can say that about a lot of this cast. I want to talk a bit more about, the returnees, the Tyler tribe. Sarah, someone feels like an outsider, fears kind of being an early boot. There's a lot of season 8 people, right? Is there like three? Danny, Michelle. Was Michelle
Yeah.
7 or 8? Was she both?
So Pat was in the last season. Um, Dennis was in the last season. Danny was in the last season. Haley was in the last season,
Yeah.
and Michelle was in season 7 and 8.
Yeah, so that's like a lot.
Haley, yeah, Haley, Danny, and Pat were all new last season. Michelle had played the 2 seasons before, 7 and 8, and Dennis, like I said, has played every season. So there is a lot of season 8. Um, I would say of the season 8 people, though, each one of them has one, maybe two allies. Michelle worked closely with Haley for most of last season, but then they kind of turned on each other towards the end. Dennis worked with Pat for a tiny bit, but Pat also worked against him for early on. Um, Danny was voted out by Haley and Michelle at the swap. Um, so no one that like there's no duo on of those season 8s that like really are like lockstep
Mhm.
and key like that I think we're like, oh, they're automatically working together. I think the closest to that might be Haley and Michelle. But yeah, a lot of season 8s, but like a good mix of people that I didn't feel like, oh, there's just going to be a season 8 alliance off the bat. And I
Yeah.
think we see in this episode that there, there's a it's not just that. There's a little more overall friction than that. Though we do see the narrative of maybe Sarah, Brandon, Dennis, the people from the earlier seasons, maybe forming something.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw that. I mean, I was worried when I saw a lot of season 8. I was like, yeah, maybe this is gonna just be like pick off maybe the who was that Sarah from season 1, right? But it seems to be not the case. It seems like there's either past vendettas, past game relationships, and just new game ahead of them that, it seems to me that there's like three, there's a three, there's a three. Then you could have had Pat just simply in the middle until he wanted to go and
Yeah.
do a lot of crazy things, which I love. All right, I'm here for it. But is it too early? Because I know he wants to play like more maybe assertive, more like a dominant game, maybe just like make the moves that maybe he was afraid to maybe take the shots at in the past. But it seems to me that he's like too vocal at the wrong places. It's like that thing where like you have to be like the right version of yourself at the right time in every game because the game's always moving. And I'm just worried that's going to come back to bite him because I don't want it to because it's very entertaining and we share the same name. And I hope that he can skate out of this mess that he kind of created. Because it could have been so easy for him to just pick a side because I feel like it would have been the first vote. It would have been those 3 and 3.
Yeah, I wrote that down because the same thing that yeah, it seemed like there was a very natural 3-3 and he could have just chose what he wanted to do with it. And I think he would have chosen the Brandon Dennis Sarah side
Me
because
too.
and it may be offered then maybe Michelle is the name he put out. And I think that would have been a lot more natural and maybe they would have gone along with it then. But the way like early on, like it seemed like he was prioritizing a target over like the bonds and like
Yeah.
he was like trying to connect with people through a target instead of connecting with people through like game needs and like what how do our play styles work together and how what kind of goals do we share in common like I feel like in these seasons, like when you know a few people coming in, or just in general, when you know how someone else's play style is going to be, you want to bond early on and be like, hey, we did this last time, and I think we should do this time because you and I both like to do this.
Mhm.
And I think yeah, he could have easily fit in the middle of that. He seemed very stuck on Michelle, which again, in theory, I don't think is a bad idea in theory. I mean, Michelle's a strong player who has gotten to the final five 2 seasons in a row now. Arguably the best player not to win Survivor Branford, I would say. But and she technically was one of the people leading the charge to vote him out, but I would say it was more, from my perspective, it was more because she didn't want to vote out the other options because she was closer with them more than she wanted Pat out specifically. So I think that's sort of the thing where you got to recognize that and let that go coming into a new game. She wasn't like pounding after him in his last game and was successful. It was just the first merge vote. She'd never been on a tribe with him, and she's a player that will lead the way. And if you're in the way, that's it. So I would want to be on her good side early. And the fact that he created all this drama, wow, it was very entertaining. It was awesome. And again, the right idea in theory, I would say, but like you said, could have easily just ridden the line between those groups of three and then maybe got what he wanted from there. But instead,
Mhm.
it feels like Pat is the number one name on everyone's mouth right now.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be public enemy number one because of something we're going to talk about after this immunity challenge. Get into the immunity challenge. This one's a fun one. I would have enjoyed this. We know that Parkside wanted it to be a swimming challenge. It ended up not working in their favor. The vets are going to ultimately win this. So a newbie is going to be the first boot. No one wants to be the first boot. But someone has to wear that, and we get back and. I feel like Tasha is like worried that it's like her initially, but then she like doesn't know who she wants to talk to. I feel like she's the person who I have like the least read on of like where she stands in the game on who does she even trust. We see maybe down the line that it could be like a girls thing that's gonna form in that tribe, but I just kind of am struggling to notice kind of where she's at. But it makes her compelling in a sense. But where do
Isn't
you think
Tasha
Tasha
part of
stands?
that? Sorry, you finish.
Yeah, yeah, no, like where do you think Tasha kind of stands? I know we see, the vote ends up being what it is, but where did you get from her in this episode?
Isn't she a part of this that park try that forms? There is an alliance of like Steven,
Yeah, but I feel
Tasha,
like
and
is
Scott.
that real? Because she went right to Victoria and was like, Steven and they pitched this like put the girls thing on the radar. Like is she just trying to plant all of her seeds and put herself in the right positioning at all times? Or is she playing the guys? Because I think she's just planting seeds. I think she will work with these guys. And I think there just comes a time where, you know, where does she really go? But I don't know.
Yeah,
I was a
I
little
don't.
confused by her a little bit, but I like her.
Yeah, I don't think Tasha had a crazy episode, but I also think the Parkville tribe with Parkside tribe was interesting because I felt like most of the better players weren't like the stars of the episode. Like it was
Yeah.
more Tim Jackson and Christy a little, whereas some of the people that I think were more successful coming out of that tribe after episode one were a little quieter just because they were. I think the stronger players were just kind of letting things happen so
Play out,
far
yeah.
and just let him play out. And I think Tasha did well with that to me. Like she has this group of three she can go to. There's a hint from the next episode, girls. I take that with a grain of salt.
Always
I
do.
think that a lot of those hints are just suggestions, and it may be a one off, but
Yeah.
sometimes they come to fruition. But um, I I I even though I didn't get a ton on how other people are feeling about her. I felt good about Tasha coming out of this episode mainly because I think not that they were going to win the challenge, but I think she ensured that they were going to lose the challenge. Like it
Yeah.
was over when they kicked it.
Yeah.
Not that challenge, the problem with that challenge to me is there wasn't a lot of room to come back. There was no
Mhm.
equalizer at the end. There was no like even a small puzzle. It felt like once you were in the lead on the beach,
You
it
just
was
had to
more a
maintain it.
challenge of yeah, it was more a challenge of minimizing mistakes than maximizing or like solving anything or doing anything right. So the returnees tribe just had little to no mistakes, and Tasha kicking it and apologizing at the start of her like the post challenge phase, and then nothing really coming of it immediately after. just seems like people aren't too worried about that. I think it's a one-off and would much rather work with her than even bother about with bringing up the, oh, this person hurt the way the challenge went, because I think this tribe is trying to play hard, and they realize there's bigger fish to fry than worrying about um how one thing in the challenge went, especially because they probably would have still lost anyways.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we get back and we see some more that this Tim versus Jackson war kind of ensues. We keep hearing this 6-1 majority, this 6-1 majority going back and forth. Kind of don't know where it's gonna land. We see that Jackson's name's coming up a lot more. Did you expect it to fall on Jackson there? Uh, at that point in the game?
Um, uh, like I said earlier, coming out of the pre-challenge portion, it didn't surprise me that Jackson's name came up. Just because, but I wouldn't have been shocked if it was someone else either. There was really no one like clear that was being messy, similar to like Pat on the other tribe. But also early on, you need to form a connection or two, and I felt like Jackson might have been the odd man out. I mean, he even said that he liked Tim early on in his voting confessional before he left, and then Tim just turned on him. It generally seemed like Tim just chose who he wanted to, and everyone had to kind of run with
Also,
it because it'd be tough to push too hard otherwise. But um, yeah, I don't know. I think Jackson just got a bit unlucky that he was the first name out, and I think um I don't know. I think the only thing I would offer that he could have done earlier is just push more for an individual bond or two that he would feel like would really have his back once Tim was going around. Someone that could resist and be like someone more than Christy, basically. Maybe Christy was that one. Maybe he had a really good thing with Christy. I mean, Christy seemed to. I don't know how much Christy wanted him in as much as she didn't trust Tim. It felt more
yeah.
so that, but I think he needed someone else, one more person in his corner,
Is this move
because if
good
he,
for is this move good for Steven and Josh?
I don't love this move because I think on these small tribes in Survivor Branford, I think you kind of want a somewhat of a split vote to start, whether that be a 4-3 or a 5-2 or some similar to that, like a 5-1-1. You want someone else in the minority besides the person you're voting out, because now next round your possibilities are you could have two groups of three form, and that's never good because someone has to cave or you're going to rocks like your second tribal, which is a lot. You might have another unanimous vote, which is fine if you can be in a good spot in that pecking order. But like we saw with Jackson this episode, if you're not establishing yourself in the right way during these quick time frames, people can just run with a name that
Mhm.
someone took a little aggressively early on in the round. So I think it's definitely a better spot when things are a little more split and maybe you went a little aggressively towards Tim and maybe it ended up 4-3 or 5-2. Then if you're in that majority, you're feeling a lot better. Maybe your tribe is more fractured, but you're going to go to at least one more tribal here and you'd rather have an easier vote next tribal, whereas right now I feel like the Parkside tribe still has a lot of question marks. I don't think it's as clear cut as they're going to go right for Tim next. I feel like
I agree.
Christie might, but I think overall there's going to be a little more conflict this next vote.
Leading into this next episode, who are you worried about? Just give me a name of someone maybe you're worried about. Kind of maybe won't be able to get their footing, or maybe has stepped a little bit too far and can't backtrack, or I know we don't have much to go off of for the next episode, but who's someone that you're kind of hoping can pull through? Someone that kind of worries you.
I mean, I think Pat's the really obvious one. Are you talking about Parkside still or just
Or just
overall?
whoever,
I think Pat's the really obvious one. He had a really tough episode. I would say Michelle too, to be honest, even though people feel more on her side, because I think we didn't get a lot of her perspective this episode. Most of her confessionals or like her screen time. She had plenty of screen time, but it was in a lot of
Yeah.
like one conversations with people, and I think she's really feeling the heat right now. And I didn't love early on when she said what she wanted to change for this season was the people she trusts. I don't think that's been Michelle's problem at all in her past two seasons. She's made it to Final Five once and Final Four the other time. So she's pretty consistent with getting people who trust her and being in the majority early on in the game. She just becomes too much of a threat towards the end. So I think she needs to refocus on working with people that will get voted out over her towards the end,
Mhm.
and a little less about like trust, because trust gets thrown out the window when you're in an end game. Like everyone's playing to win, and alliances that have been going through the whole game are gonna break down if those alliances realize that one member of their group is gonna win. So I think she needs to worry less about trust, which she's been very successful with, and more on setting herself up for the end game, because her early to middle game's been really good, but her end game's gone the same way twice now. So a little worried about her long term. But yeah, in the immediate, Pat, and then from Parkside, I guess Tim. But like you said, I feel like Tim is social enough that I think he's going to overcome what's maybe hinted at him from Christie, and I would be a little more worried about her, especially with this fake idol. I don't know if she has the intuition to navigate around if there's a resistance from Tim, or if people are worried about her idol that the whole tribe now thinks is real after round one. It just seems like a lot of things going against her right now narratively, even though maybe in theory she's not doing too bad.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think I'm excited to see how it shakes out. I think this is gonna be a fun season. I think we're gonna see a lot more play out with either these fake idols, these pre-existing relationships, these vendettas, these meetings, these team meetings, everything that we're doing and watching is all been good stuff. Before I let you go, Ryan, I want to ask you, you have a winner pick?
Um, I do, and I think this is controversial based on something you mentioned earlier. I think you were not high on this player, so maybe this is a bad pick. I don't know,
Well, I'm
but
usually wrong with
I
these things, so go ahead.
I, I kind of liked Sarah's first episode, to be honest. I felt like she was just kind of chill with everyone, and
Yeah,
I
no,
don't
she definitely
I
was.
and I think even if maybe her idea of like the older players, Dennis, Sarah, Brandon, doesn't work out, I think people just want to keep her along, and I don't see her going anytime soon, at least. I think she's a player I'd be a little worried about if she can turn it on and be a little more of a gamer late in the game. I have no idea what her game's like. Season one, I think it's the only
Mhm.
Branford season that's not recorded. So she's kind of like a wild card in that
Just gonna
sense.
say that she's a wild card and she's compelling, and I think that she adds for a different perspective on the game because a lot of these players have either played together or focused on some other things, whereas she's coming in a different light. And I really like her and Brandon together. I think that's fun.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think I in theory was a lot more worried about them, but I thought their first episodes were fine. And so I'm looking forward to seeing how they adapt with these with a group of mostly newer players. But yeah, I'm going to pick her. I really liked the way she reflected on herself and her approach in this episode. I feel like she got a lot of good content about how she wanted to play this game. And even though she hasn't had a ton to do with that first, I think it's episode one, and I think that's where I'm gonna set myself right now. Who would you say, Pat? Who are you? What is your pick after episode one?
I'm actually gonna keep it in the alliance. I'm actually going with Brandon. I really
Okay.
loved his early confessional about being reflective of himself and trying to take a new perspective into the game. Doesn't want to be top dog, but wants wants his hard work to be noticed by, and get the credit in the end. And I think that he's someone who's socially going to be chef's kiss. I think strategically with Sarah, if he can keep the numbers and keep, and keep that together, I think he's easily going to merge. And I think there's a world where that's the alliance that we watch that goes under this radar. I think that'd be fun to watch. And yeah, I'm going to go with Brandon.
I like that pick. Yeah, I think the two of them have shown themselves being in our right spot really early on.
Mhm.
We'll have to see if things hold and Pat or Michelle go first, but it seems like they'll be all right. Who would you pick if you had to pick a player from the new player, the Parkside tribe? So if you had a winner pick from their tribe, who would you say?
I'm gonna go with Victoria. Kind of for reasons I pointed out earlier. I think she has a lot under her sleeve. I think she's playing intentionally quiet. I think just taking in the information, trying to establish herself socially. I think she's someone to look out for. Um, yeah, that's I feel like Victoria, maybe Steve. No, Steve. Sorry, I'm going with Victoria. Yeah.
I like that. Yeah, I think I'm a little lower on Victoria, but maybe I'm just biased by the edit she got in this episode. I would have
Mhm.
liked a tiny bit more of her, like her intentionality going, but I think there are a few people on that tribe because again, a lot of the screen time was dominated towards the Tim and Jackson war,
Yeah.
and Jackson being gone. It felt like just a lot of him, but yeah, from that tribe, I would say the person I'm believing in the most. Um, I'm between I'm between that trio of Tasha, Steve, and Josh. I'm gonna go with Tasha. I feel like she has a lot of angles to go with going
Mhm.
into the next vote. I don't see her being a target, and I think it'll come down to if she makes the right decision going forward of how to navigate the group she's in right now. But we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of potential with um, all the people left on that tribe, to be honest. So I'm looking forward to seeing how it evolves. I think after one more vote, we'll have a better sense of where those players' games are headed.
Yeah, I think Tasha screams like super fan. She's super fun. Like I think like there's a story to be had there about where she's just kind of happy to be there, then finds her footing in the game and could be, a dominant force later in this game. Uh Super likable. Yeah, it's a very likable cast. I would have a tough time on this cast because I just like people a lot. So it's like, it's easier if I'm on a trial with people I wouldn't want to work with, but I would struggle, man. There's a lot of compelling people, a lot of people that seem to approach the game in different ways, and that's always, super fun. So before we do head out of here, is there anything Survivor related, anything that you want to say about the season, anything you want to say before we head on out?
Well, if you did watch the first episode of Survivor Branford and you enjoyed it, there's many more episodes on the channel, Survivor Branford. I'm in the last two seasons, season 8 and 7. You can watch those; they're great watches. I know the seasons before are awesome too, but I think Jim's editing and some of the casting in the last 3, 4 seasons has really stepped it up. And um, I think if you like a really good edited product, I think Brantford's some of the best out there. Again, like I said in the beginning of the episode, I don't think it's the craziest cast of all time, but narratively, it's like one of the best to watch, in my opinion, just because you have a clear sense of who everyone is which
Yeah.
is sort of hard sometimes in these games to based on what players give you. But I really like what he does with it. Um, I ran my own LRG in college. I ran a college Survivor Yukon. So we have two seasons out on our YouTube channel, Survivor Yukon. So if you ever want to check another one out, you can check us out there. And otherwise, just want to thank you for having me on, Pat. I always love to talk some Survivor. It's fun to talk Branford. I haven't had the opportunity to do that because Branford doesn't really have its own podcast. I think it's great that you guys are giving this a shot and talking about some Branford. I'm excited to hear more from fellow Tribal Lines podcaster Steven once he either gets eliminated or gets to the end whenever he can talk eventually during the season. And excited to see where the season goes from here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, dude. Thank you again, Ryan. Ben, pleasure to talk. Hopefully, if you're down, we'll have you back for some more episodes. Super knowledgeable of the game, a winner of the game, someone who, can really give me some more context into these players, into the way that this game is run, into in the way that, the game is played. So, super cool. Want to thank you again, man. Good luck to you, and I will see you soon, man.
See you soon. Thanks, Pat. Have a good one.
Sure.